Exclusive audio leaked. Diddy's desperate call before his arrest. What was he trying to hide? He knew they were coming. He tried to escape, tried to negotiate, but it was too late. In the hollow audio, Diddy is in complete despair. Shouts, panting, breathing, the sound of knocks on the door. "I knew this was going to happen," he shouts as he tries to block the room entrance. But who was behind him? And most importantly, what did he know? The media tried to stifle the case. The government cleared the archives. But now the truth has been exposed. Why are the FBI and even the NSA involved in the Diddy prison? Who were the men in black who broke into the mansion minutes before the police arrived? And the scariest, what did you know that led him to be silenced that way? This is the leak that the elite did not want you to hear. Prepare yourself, because what you will find out in this video can change everything you thought you knew about Hollywood, power, and the true forces that control the world. I remember exactly how it all started. Diddy's name has been in our reports for a while. Initially small financial irregularities, then suspicious connections with certain figures. You know how these things evolve. When you work in the FBI, you learn to identify standards. And Diddy, well, he was showing a very worrying pattern. A few weeks before the connection, we started receiving information from different sources, some from inside his circle. Reports were consistent: paranoid behavior, sudden mood changes, impulsive decisions. He was dismissing employees without explanation, exchanging personal security frequently, and surrounding only a select group of people. An internal source, someone very close to him, told us that Diddy was convinced that someone was watching him. He said that they were coming and that he needed to take action before it was too late. What really caught our attention was the increase in the movement in Beverly Hills' mansion. Security cameras showed an entry and leaves constant, especially after 10 p.m. Luxury cars stopped, people came in and out discreetly. His security system has been updated 3 times in less than a month. Motion sensors, night vision cameras, and even signal blockers. He was clearly waiting for something. On the night of the call, I was already on duty. Surveillance that night was intense. At about 10:50 p.m., Diddy appeared in the external security cameras. He was alone, walking through the back garden of the property. His behavior caught our attention immediately. He had his phone in his hand, walked in circles, running his hand on his head. It seemed nervous, perhaps even changed. It was then that he stopped abruptly, was still for a few seconds, and started typing something on the phone. That's when the call happened. We got access to audio by means I can't detail here, but what I heard, it was something I will never forget. When the call started, I was at the monitoring center with the headphones connected directly to the listening channel. As soon as the signal was intercepted, the atmosphere was completely silent. Everyone in the room knew this could be the point of turning into the investigation. The audio was clean, too clear, as if he was talking about a high-quality landline. The first thing we heard was his breath, heavy, unstable. He was clearly panicked. Diddy didn't speak immediately. There was a sound of hasty steps in the background, something beating against the floor. Leather shoes or maybe boots. Then a door sound being locked. Diddy was locking himself somewhere. Then he finally spoke. "They are here! They are here! I warned fucking! I knew this was going to happen!" His voice was shaky but loaded with anger and fear. He was breathing so strong that he could hear the air passing through the microphone. "You said it was all right. You said they didn't know anything. How did they find out?" The person across the line tried to calm him down. The voice was muffled, probably because of a distortion device, but you could understand enough. "Listen, keep calm. We have control of the situation. Stay in the room. Lock the door. Don't do anything stupid." It was at this moment that we heard the first really worrying sound, knocking on the door, strong, repetitive, as if someone were trying to break it down. Diddy was silent for a second. Then he whispered, "They are here. I can hear them." One more beat, now more strongly. Then a voice in the background, "Mr. Combs, open the door now." Diddy was silent for 2 or 3 seconds. It was one of those silences in which you can feel the adrenaline rising. Then he shouted, "I won't open it! I won't open it!" The person on the line tried to calm him again, but this time Diddy ignored. We start hearing the sound of furniture being dragged, something of glass breaking. He was trying to block the door. It was then that he said something he made everyone in the room stop breathing. "It's the government, isn't it? Was that? You sold me, didn't you? They gave me to them. I know what I did. I know what they want. They want that, but they won't make it." That was a watershed. We already had our suspicions, but listening to Diddy confirming that he was involved in something bigger, something that could put the government in the play, it was completely different. The noise of strokes in the door increased. Now you could listen clearly, someone trying to break into the entrance. Diddy started screaming, "No! No! Get out of here!" The person on the line then spoke firmly. "If they come in, don't say anything. Nothing. You understood?" At that moment, we heard a high snap, probably the door being knocked down, followed by shouts and the sound of a fall. Then hasty steps, muffled voices. Someone shouted, "Hands on the head!" And Diddy began to beg, "Please, don't take me. I can explain. I know what you want. I can help." And then, silence. The line fell. I took the headphones, looked at the other agents in the room, and all had the same expression. Shock. Diddy knew exactly what was going on. He knew who was coming after him. And the frightening of all, he knew why. After the call fell, we knew time was critical. My partner and I were already on their way to Beverly Hills Mansion when the signal was cut. We had a field support team, but the instructions were clear. They don't get in until the situation is completely under control. However, we already had eyes on everything. Diddy's security system was so advanced that we got remote access through vulnerability, something the agency's technology team had discovered weeks earlier. I was in the car with the notebook open, watching everything through the cameras of the mansion. When Diddy made the connection, he was in the library, a huge room with dark wood from the floor to the ceiling and a marble fireplace in the center. He had locked the door and pushed a leather armchair against her. But what caught my attention was the details of the environment. There was an open briefcase on the table with batteries of money, hundreds of $100 scattered dollars. On the suitcase side, 3 disposable phones, a half-erased cigarette, and a virtually empty bottle of whiskey. But what really made me freeze was what was on the table, next to the briefcase. A fake passport named David Kingston and a passing pass to Dubai, scheduled for 6 a.m. He was planning to escape. Diddy was taking a deep breath, walking around in the room, talking alone. I managed to capture a few words as he said, I knew this was going to happen. They told me I was safe, but I knew." Outside in the external security cameras, I saw the chaos unfolding. At least 5 black SUVs were parked at the entrance of the property. LAPD and FBI agents were forming a perimeter, armed, giving orders on the radio. But what caught my attention was a 6th vehicle, a black van without identification, parked a little farther. 3 men left the van, dressed in dark suits, without insignia, without identification. They walked directly toward the lateral input of the mansion. I saw one of the men touch the ear, as if receiving instructions via phone. They were not our men. Then the situation climbed. Suddenly, Diddy stopped walking and was completely still. He looked at the door as if he had heard something. By the audio of the cameras, we can capture a muffled sound, like the sound of an activating electronic device. It was then that we heard the controlled explosion sound, probably a small C4 load used to break into reinforced locks. Diddy shouted and ran to the corner of the room. He pulled a drawer under the table and took something out. Looked like a gun. The men in black invaded the library seconds later. Everything was so fast that we couldn't even sue. The first man raised a device that looked like a taser, but was different, a kind of electromagnetic pulse weapon. When Diddy raised the gun to react, he was hit. Diddy fell to the floor convulsing, while the other 2 men entered and began to scour the room quickly. I was shouting with my partner in the car. "Who are these guys? They are not LAPD. They are not ours. They are not registered in the operation." The field team was also confused. LAPD agents, who were outside, did not try to interfere. The men in black took the briefcase with the money, the disposable phones, and the fake passport. One of them leaned over Diddy, who was still lying on the floor holding his body side, moaning in pain. The man approached his ear and said something we were able to capture through the audio cameras. "It doesn't end here. Stay silent." They left the room less than 30 seconds later. When LAPD agents finally entered, Diddy was in fetal position, holding the body side and crying softly. "They took everything," he whispered. The medical team was called immediately. When we got there, Diddy was being placed on a stretcher. He was in shock. The paramedics said he had high heart rate and signs of dehydration. But the strangest was what he said to me while being placed in the ambulance. He held my wrist hard and said, "They won't stop, not now." I looked at my partner. He was as perplexed as me. If those men weren't from the police, so who were they? I arrived at the mansion about 10 minutes after the men in black came out. The scene was completely chaotic. Vehicle lights illuminated the long way to enter the property. LAPD and SWAT agents were in formation, blocking all exits. Helicopters flying over the place, illuminating the mansion with spotlight. Diddy was being loaded on a visibly fragile maca with his face covered with sweat. His eyes were open, but he seemed distant, as if he was in shock. The medical team was monitoring his vital signs all the time. But what caught my attention was the two federal agents next to him, talking to the paramedics. They were dressed in dark suits, unidentified. I approached and tried to ask their documentation, but one of them just looked at me with a cold smile and said, "We are here under Washington's direct orders." Washington? Since when is a prison of this level directly coordinated by Washington? Something was out of the standard. When I tried to press him, the agent only gave me a sealed document, marked with a seal of confidentiality that I immediately recognized. It was a seal of the NSA. The NSA is not involved in ordinary criminal cases, unless. The LAPD commander who was coordinating the operation approached me at that moment. He was clearly uncomfortable. "We received orders not to interfere with detention. The feds are in charge now." I tried to argue, but this is an FBI operation. We started the investigation. Diddy is our responsibility. The commander only shook his head, frustrated. "No more." Meanwhile, Diddy was placed in the ambulance. I managed to reach him for a moment before the agents took him. He was still weak, but his eyes were fixed on me, intense. "I tried to warn you. They are coming after me." I approached and whispered, "Who is coming after you, Diddy? Who were those men?" He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then said something that made me freeze. "I thought they were from the government, but now I'm not sure anymore." The paramedics began to close the ambulance door, but before it closed completely, he said, "They want that." I stood there trying to sue what he had just said. That? What did he mean by that? It was then that one of the federal agents approached me again. He smiled uncomfortably and said in a casual tone, "This case is now classified. You didn't see anything. You don't know anything." I refused to retreat. I looked directly at him and said, "You know what he did, don't you know?" The agent just smiled again and replied, "The question is not what he did. The question is what he knows." And then he walked away while Diddy's ambulance departed with police escort. But things got even stranger after that. When I returned to the command center, I tried to access the mansion's surveillance files. The recordings, the audio of the call, everything we had collected. It was all erased. The servers were cleaned remotely. All audio and video files linked to Diddy have been removed. Even the FBI internal records on the investigation were filed under restricted access level. I tried to access the files using my security authorization, but I received a lock alert with a code I had never seen before. The code indicated that the blockade came from a level above the FBI, possibly from the Department of Defense or any national security agency. "What the hell is happening here?" I asked my partner. He just looked at me with the same confused expression I had on my face. Diddy was being covered, but not because he was innocent, because he knew something. Something that could not be disclosed. But the worst was coming. The news exploded like a bomb. I was in the office the next morning when the phone started ringing nonstop. The news channels had already caught the information. Diddy stuck in Beverly Hills, surrounded by SWAT, the desperate call before prison. But what caught my attention was the tone of the reports. It seemed that someone had already shaped the narrative even before journalists got access to the details. The first press release was strangely controlled. LAPD released a short and vague statement stating that the arrest was part of an investigation on the way on fraud and money laundering. But I knew this was just the tip of the iceberg. In less than 2 hours, some public figures began to speak, and that's what really made me suspicious. First, Jay-Z posted an enigmatic tweet, not to mention Diddy directly. Some secrets were not made to see the light of day. Then it was Drake's turn to post a story with an eye emoji, followed by an excerpt from the song Survival. All of this disorder in addressing. Beyoncé, who usually remains distant from controversy, enjoyed a post suggesting that Diddy was being silenced. But what really made the situation be bizarre was when 50 Cent entered the conversation. He posted a picture of Diddy handcuffed with the caption, "I warned you, brother, no one leaves this life clean." This didn't seem to be just about business. There was something deeper happening. Meanwhile, Diddy's circle began to dispose of. 2 of his main lawyers resigned the same morning, citing conflict of interest. His security boss was dismissed without explanation. And then came the real blow. The Revolt TV, Diddy's media network, was taken down. The site went down completely around 2:45 p.m. In a matter of minutes, all pages linked to the Revolt were excluded from social networks. No explanation has been given. "They are cleaning everything," I muttered to my partner while we watched the events unfolded. But the strangest was the behavior of journalists who usually covered Diddy. TMZ journalist Harvey Levin posted a note stating that new details will soon emerge. But in less than an hour, the post was deleted. The TMZ team was completely silent after that. Even New York Times published a strange story. The original title was "Diddy Stuck in Money Laundering and Conspiracy Accusations." But less than 30 minutes later, the title was changed to "Sean Combs Involved in a Federal Investigation." This was not just media manipulation. Someone was pulling the strings behind the scenes to control the narrative. But what made me freeze is what happened at the LAPD news conference the next afternoon. The police chief made a short statement without allowing questions. But in the end, he said something that made me feel a cold in my pimple. The situation is under control, and the competent authorities have already assumed the case. He was not talking about the local police. That same night, I received a call of an unknown number. When I attended, the voice on the other side was low, almost a whisper. "Stop investigating. You have no idea who you are dealing with." I tried to identify the voice, but the call was cut shortly after. The next morning, CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC changed the focus completely. Suddenly, the headlines about Diddy disappeared from the main pages. The coverage was reduced to footnotes. What made me realize the true level of control was what happened on social networks. Diddy videos being arrested were overthrown for copyright breach. Tweets about the case were signaled by misinformation. YouTube channels that covered the matter were dismantled or banished. Someone, somewhere, was erasing the story in real time. However, theories began to emerge rapidly. Some said Diddy knew something involving the US government, secret operations, information trafficking, money laundering on an international scale. Others suggested that he was part of something even darker, a kind of secret society, something linked to the Hollywood elite and the government. A theory in particular began to gain strength. Diddy was involved with the same group that took Epstein out of the scene. I am not believing in conspiracy theories, but after all that I saw, I started to wonder if it was really just paranoia. That night I reviewed the file again. All we had left were some screen catches of Diddy's security systems and the audio of the call, which for some reason had not been erased. Diddy knew what was going on. The only question now was, he knew too much? I knew Diddy wouldn't disappear silently. People like him, who are inserted so deeply in circles of power, do not disappear without trace. The question was not if he would come back. It was how he would come back and what he still knew. After prison, Diddy was taken to a federal installation. Not for a common police station. He went to a maximum safety detention center in Virginia, the type of installation reserved for prisoners of national interest. I tried to access the system for details about your custody, but all records were blocked under a security code that not even the FBI director was allowed to access. The code indicated that the block came directly from an intelligence agency, probably CIA or NSA. The last official information we got was that he was formally accused by money laundering, conspiracy, and fiscal dropout. But we both know this was not the real reason for the arrest. The initial audience was strange. First, it was made to close doors. No press coverage, no public access, no cameras. Diddy appeared before the judge in an impeccable suit, accompanied by a legal team that seemed to have been directly recruited from the offices of Wall Street. The judge read the accusations aloud. Money laundering, conspiracy for obstruction of justice, federal tax fraud. But what caught my attention was Diddy's behavior. He was silent all the time. No expression, no emotion. The judge then asked, "Do you have something to say in your defense?" Diddy looked up, looked straight at the judge and said calmly, "I just did what they told me to do." I was in the room. I was completely still. The judge seemed confused for a second, then continued the trial without commenting on the answer. Diddy's defense asked for bail, $10 million, but the request was denied on the grounds that he posed a risk to national security. National security? I looked at my partner, who was by my side, and he gave me a look that said everything. This is not just a criminal case. This is something much bigger. But what really confirmed my suspicions was what happened next. Diddy's defense team tried to argue that the evidence against him were circumstantial, that he was being politically persecuted. But the federal prosecutor, who, as far as I know, had no connection with the case, intervened and presented a document sealed directly to the judge. The judge read the document, was silent for a few seconds, and then said, "This court has no jurisdiction about this case. The defendant will be transferred to federal custody." Federal custody? I got up immediately and tried to intervene, but I was removed from the room by 2 security agents. The next day, Diddy was transferred to a military jet to an installation that was not in public records. Speculation began to emerge immediately. Some said he was being kept in one of CIA's black operations centers. Others suggested that he had been placed in witnesses because he knew something that could overthrow powerful figures in Washington and Hollywood. One theory suggested that he had negotiated a secret agreement to deliver evidence against other powerful names that had not yet been publicly mentioned. But what made me realize that something much bigger was at stake was what happened 2 weeks later. One night of Thursday, around 2 a.m., I received an envelope without sender at the door of my house. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper with Diddy's photo in court, the same photo that was never released to the media, and 3 words written in black ink. He knew so much. I tried to track the origin of the envelope, but to no avail. No fingerprint, no brand, nothing. 2 nights later, one of Diddy's personal security guards, who had worked for him for over 10 years, was found dead at a motel in Las Vegas. The cause of death was recorded as overdose, but the toxicological report indicated that the substance found in its blood was not cataloged in any known medical database. Coincidence? In the same week, the media coverage of Diddy's case simply disappeared. The few articles that were still online were removed. The journalists who covered the case began to report that they had received direct orders to abandon the matter. So another disturbing detail came up. In a conspiracy forum on the dark web, a 17-second audio appeared, allegedly recorded after Diddy's arrest. The voice was weak, hoarse, but it was unmistakable. "They can't silence me forever. I still know what happened." The audio disappeared in less than 30 minutes, but it was enough to feed even more bizarre theories. I tried to continue investigating. I really tried. But a month later, I was removed from the case without explanation. I received a direct order to cease any activity linked to Diddy or the events of that night. My partner was also removed. When I tried to access the case files again, my authorization was blocked. In the internal system, the case was marked with a red code, the type of code used only in classified national security operations. Diddy knew something no one should know. And now, either he made a deal to be silent, or he was permanently silenced. But what really haunts me is what he said in that connection. "I know what they want. The problem is that I also think I know what they want. And if I'm right, it goes far beyond Diddy.